And we are live, finally. Hopefully, everything's working. Hopefully, I got the mic turned on, the camera turned on. Let me just double check so I'm not emo cowboy and have a silent intro. No, we are here. And welcome to the first of 32 videos breaking down each and every NFL team, going through everything I have on them and breaking down every game on their schedule, predicting whether they will win, whether they will lose, and most importantly, as you can see in the top right-hand corner here, whether they will go over or under that 3.5 wins total on their season. I am excited. I am very excited to be going live on this channel. I am very excited to be breaking down each of these teams. It's going to be an arduous task going one after the other to get all 32 here before the season begins, but I'm excited for it. I am excited to talk about these teams. I usually do something like this, these season-long breakdowns, these what games will they win, what games will they lose on my TikTok and on my Instagram. I've done it for the past few years on there. Before that, I did it on my podcast, the West Coast Gamblers, and I had a lot of fun doing that, but it's tough to do it in such a short format because some of these teams, you really got to get into the nitty gritty on why you think they're going to win some games, lose some games. And I might be higher on some teams or lower on some teams than consensus. And I really want to give a full reasoning as to why. We're going to be doing this in alphabetical order. The Arizona Cardinals start us off, and I'm very happy that they do because this team is not going to be very good. So it's a very easy way for me to get into this whole format on how I plan to do all 32 of these videos. The first one being, as you can see to the right, little PTI style rundown. This is how I'm going to run every one of these videos. We're starting with the good, the bad, and the ugly. Bigger talking points about these teams. Something I really like from the offseason, something I'm kind of hesitant on, and something that I flat out just don't agree with for every one of these teams. Then we're going to go through all of the roster positional groups and grade them where I see, because Arizona, as we know, have some high flyers on the offensive side, but where do they fall behind, and why do I think they're going to be around that 3.5 win total? After that, because we are a fantasy football show and because I just finished So You Think You Can Tout, I am going to give you a name from each of these teams that I am personally targeting in my fantasy drafts. Now that I am fully a best ball bro, getting into as many puppies and BBMs as I can, there has been one Arizona Cardinal player that has a pretty high exposure rate on my teams that I've drafted so far. So I'm excited to get into why. I'll also be attacking it from a dynasty angle, a redraft angle, and of course, a guillotine angle, as me and Peter are starting that venture very soon. And then finally, we're finishing with the schedule, going through each game step by step. What are they winning? What are they losing? And can they hit that 3.5 win total number? And that number, it looks low. I know that it looks low. I will say it started at 4.5, and now it has already been bet down to 3.5. That is the number out there in the sports books right now, with juice a little bit to the over, and we're going to try and decide where Arizona lands, because you look at that and a snap reaction is, are they going to win more than that? Absolutely, they're going to win more than that. It's going to be very interesting to see if they can. But this is a live show. We will be having a comment section if people want to leave stuff. We want to make this interactive. I am down to talk to everyone about Arizona, and we will be doing these pretty much every day from now until we get to all 32, most likely later on in Pacific time. I'm sorry, all you East Coast bros, you're going to be asleep, but this is the best time I can do it. And we might fall behind on a few too. Might have to do a few 2-a-days, 3-a-days to make sure all 32 teams are done. But I'm excited to get this ball rolling, and I've kind of set this task to make sure I can get through all 32. I know it's going to be a tall mountain to climb, but I feel like we're going to be better off for it. But let's dive into Arizona, the Cardinals, the 3.5 win terrible team with the good, the bad, and the ugly. Here's the good part. Kyler Murray is no longer in this organization. And when I go through these bigger things, I want to bring stats. I want to bring stuff that I've done through my research. I'm not really going to start all of these terribly glib, but I do want to start off with Kyler Murray being gone as the best thing to happen from this Arizona Cardinals offseason, because heading into last year, I had both Tua and Kyler as the worst organizational top-down quarterbacks in the NFL. Like, not a player that, say, like a Daniel Jones even, who's getting a one-year deal for Indianapolis. You don't know if it's going to work out. We're talking about franchise quarterbacks, people that have big-time contracts that organizations say, that's my dude. Kyler was the absolute worst of the bunch because even with a Trevor Lawrence, you pay him that money, you don't know if he's going to provide. And then suddenly he has a great season under Liam Cohen, and you're like, there's hope in the organization. You draft guys like the Jordan Loves, and you pay them the money, and you hope that they can achieve the heights of a Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson. Kyler Murray and players like him, when you give him such the contract that you do, they become a sinking ship to your organization and drag everything down. And the only thing you can do is eat that money to try and get out of the contract. And Arizona finally bit that bullet and did it. And I'm not just saying this because Minnesota is now the home for Kyler Murray, and he'll be likely QB1 over there. And I am a Green Bay Packers fan. I'm not just trying to bash on the Vikings, but I do think Kyler Murray is one of the worst QBs in the NFL, and the stats prove it. I love going through Warren Sharp's NFL preview because he has all these statistics, puts them up against history, and really gives you a great view of how some players and organizations are run. And Kyler Murray, since 2022, Warren Sharp had this great stat that on throws 10 plus yards down the field, since 2022, Kyler Murray is 50th out of 50 in EPA per dropback. Last year, he was terrible on advanced metrics for Arizona. He was outside of the top 32 in EPA outside the numbers. He was outside of the top 32 in EPA deep down the field, outside of the top 32 in EPA in a clean pocket. And yes, this could all be from Arizona. It could be better in Minnesota. But I just believe that Kyler Murray in totality is not the QB of the future in both Minnesota and clearly was not in Arizona. It was a good move. Long-winded way of me saying it was a good move to finally let this man go and move forward. However, the bad part is what I predict this team's idea of what they can be in 2026 is. And that has to do with, I believe, the man in the middle here, the scapegoat of 2026, because if the NBA was going to infest its ways into the NFL, Arizona and Miami this season would be the clear magnifying glasses as to why. Because Arizona does not want to win in 2026. They want to lose as many games as they can so they can get that number one overall pick, or at least as close to it as they can, so they can build for the future. They can find the next QB that they're hitching their wagon to. Jacoby Brissett, obviously not that man. And so when they lose all of these games with this new head coach coming in, we have all of these bright, shiny stars on the offense. The owner wants stuff to succeed. Well, when they lose a bunch of games, what do they do when they go to the owner? They point to the defensive coordinator that they kept from the last regime. A lot of teams have done this recently. We're talking about one tomorrow in Atlanta where they keep the DC from the old coaching staff that they fired everybody on because he knows the players. They know the scheme. They don't have to teach him anything new. He's a veteran DC. Nick Rall is not really a veteran, but he has all that stuff in the bag. They don't need to install a new defense alongside of a new offense. The problem with that mindset with Arizona is last year they were so bad on defense, it does not make any sense to keep the defensive coordinator. You're not gaining anything by it. They were bottom 5 in points per drive, punts forced per drive, touchdowns per drive, bottom 10 in yards allowed per drive. There was nothing that this defense did. Pressure the quarterback, stop the pass, stop the run, that Nick Rallis, the DC, can hang his hat on and say, this is something we can build upon. My view in why they kept him is so at the end of the year, they can go to the owner and say, hey, Trey McBride showed flashes, Jeremiah Love, Marvin Harrison, Michael Wilson. We really made some gains on the offensive end. We need to let somebody go. It's got to be the DC so we can bring our guy in and really revamp that role. And I feel bad for him because I don't believe there's a lot going on that he can be successful with. This is not a very good roster, as we'll get to in a second. But Nick Rallis, to me, is the bad. And the ugly is Nathaniel Hackett. And boys, I don't understand why Nathaniel Hackett has a job in the NFL in 2026. I am confused as to why someone agreed to let him be in charge of anything on the offensive side of the football once more. This man is still living off of a 2020 and 2021 run where Aaron Rodgers won back-to-back MVPs and Nathaniel Hackett was the OC in name only. Another LaFleur was the head coach of Green Bay, and he was the one installing the offense. He was the one calling the plays. Nathaniel Hackett was in charge of the red zone, or as they called it, the gold zone. And you can look at those EPA advanced metrics on how that offense performed, and it actually took steps back when it was in the red zone compared to how well it was performing when it was in between the 20s. Nathaniel Hackett was the only one who could stop Aaron Rodgers those 2 years, but he did enough and he knew enough people and he shook enough hands to get a job in Denver, where they averaged 15 and a half points per game, the lowest Denver's had since 1971. Then he went to the New York Jets, failed again there with Aaron Rodgers going down. He couldn't get the best out of Zach Wilson. We all know the story, and yet still, he is brought into Arizona as the potential fixer of everything going on with this team. I don't understand it. I think it hurts overall. It's why I'm scared to press draft on a Trey McBride, a Marvin Harrison, a Michael Wilson, because if Nathaniel Hackett can touch this, anything he touches turns the opposite of gold. And I am worried that this ugly part of the offense, this ugly part of the new regime, could affect things when it comes to how this team should reach the heights that aren't very high, but should reach. Because maybe the younger LaFleur just wants that mentor. Maybe he just wants the guy to be the calm hand on his shoulder and guide him through being a first-year head coach. But the more they put on Nathaniel Hackett's plate, the more I will not enjoy what's going on in Arizona. And the winner of So You Think You Can Tell Mr. Cup's Analytics hates the Kyler hate. For a man who likes analytics as much as you do, my guy, I'm surprised you are as in on Kyler as I am, because there's no one I would want to hitch my wagon to less than Kyler Murray. I would rather have Tua as my quarterback than Kyler Murray. But again, not talking about Kyler. We'll save that for Minnesota. Instead, now we're going to break down the position groups for this team, starting with the offense. Look at that. I got the transition down, baby. How happy am I? Someone will tell me how to do that smoother because they know how to do StreamYard. That's okay. We're working as we go. But the offensive position groups, this is definitely the better part of Arizona. And we'll start right there with the QB room. We got Jacoby Brissett as the presumptive starter, Gardner Minshew, and Carson Beck on this roster. This is a bottom tier QB room. Now, Jacoby had a pretty decent year counting stats wise. He also had pretty good EPA. I think he was 18th in EPA per dropback when he was the starter here. And he did bring life to this offense in the second half of this year. A lot of that was in garbage time. A lot of that was when this team was down multiple touchdowns and he had the freedom to let it ride. But I do believe Jacoby is a bottom tier starter in the league, better than some of the other guys that will be starting in week one across the NFL. He is better than Gardner Minshew. He is better than today's version of Carson Beck. And I'm probably giving a D- to this QB room overall. I think it can be sufficient, but it's nothing you're going to celebrate. As for the pass catchers, the Marvin Harrison, Michael Wilson, and Trey McBrides of the world, I struggle to not give this unit, I will say, a B+, because if Marvin can reach the heights that he was drafted at, and if Michael Wilson can reproduce the last 8 weeks of the season where he was second in receptions and second in receiving yards, then I'm giving this pass catching group an A, because Marvin Harrison can be that A1 player, Michael Wilson can be that B1 player, and then Trey McBride across the middle is the biggest threat outside of Brock Bowers at the tight end position. So there's a real chance for this team to grow should they all stay healthy, and it is by far the headline of this team, what you have to circle when you face them every Sunday. Then you get to the running backs, and that's where I start scratching my head, because Jeremiah Love is amazing. He's going to be amazing. He's going to be awesome. Well worth the draft pick where he was drafted, even though running backs are thrown behind. But if that was the case, if that was the plan for Arizona heading into this season, I still don't know why they decided to sign Tyler Algier to the money that they signed him to. Not a huge contract, but still money that could be spent elsewhere on a team with a myriad of holes. When you only have so many picks in the draft, to spend one on a running back and a third-round pick on a QB that probably is going to get replaced with your first-round pick next year, it makes me scratch my head on the way this team is being built. However, when you look at Jeremiah Love and the talent he brings, and Tyler Algier and the volume running back he could be, this is a fantastic running back room for 2026. I don't know if it's going to do well in the future. I don't know if it's going to lead to many wins, but I'm giving this room a B+ as well. So far, so good. Then we get to the interior, where you're starting a bunch of players that some have shown flashes of brilliance, the Paris Johnsons of the world. I also like Basantis at guard. I think he's going to be a starter when we actually get to week one. And Siamalu's a big MFer who I think can be a mauler in the run game. But the depth on this line and the age of this line, especially at the tackles, is not exactly anything that's makes you happy. I think this offensive line is going to struggle. I think it's going to open up lanes in the running game. I do think it's going to struggle to protect Jacoby Brissett, who will need to get some guys downfield in order to throw the deep ball like he does. I'm giving this offensive line a C minus, and it really holds the overall hope for this offense back. However, everything on this offense is better than the defense. This defense is terrible. This defense is up there for the worst unit in the league. As I went through the stats of last year, they were bottom 5 in almost everything, and they did not really bring anything, add anything to this offense to make it much better on paper. They did add Andrew Wingard in the backfield, and the backfield's probably my favorite part of this defense. I like Will Johnson. Garrett Williams is okay. Buda Baker is always going to be a star even up in his age. I'd probably give this defensive backfield closer to a C minus. However, I believe the D-line here, even with Walter Nolan, if he can be healthy, I don't like this D-line at all, and I really don't like this linebacking core and who they have coming off the edge. I am terrified as a Packers fan that Josh Sweat is potentially heading to Green Bay because for the price that they paid for him, I don't believe the return on investment is there. This defense is really, really, really bad, but that could mean for excellent things coming in the fantasy perspective, because if we have high scoring games on the defensive side, that means the offense can put up numbers as well. So who is the fantasy target for the Arizona Cardinals? You have the Trey McBrides, you have the Marvin Harrisons, maybe even Jacoby in the late. You want to take the running back Jeremiah Love? I'm going a little bit deeper because, again, of how I believe this team is going to be run and how it is going to be built for 2026. The man I'm targeting for Arizona is, can he do this transition in time? Bum, bum, ba, ba. Tyler Algier, because I think it is much more of a timeshare in Arizona than it is Jeremiah Love being the number one volume running back. They paid money to Algier because they trust this man to do everything you need him to do to carry the football. This man, before Bijan got there as a rookie, had a 1,000-yard season in Atlanta, has been stuck behind a generational running back in Atlanta for the next 3 years of his career. Finally, got to find his own team only to be stuck behind a generational guy again. However, at RB48 in best ball, I believe this guy is going to get enough volume in this team to pay off that number and then some. While I can pick apart even the Trey McBrides of the world, Marvin Harrison, Michael Wilson, I can pick apart the cases in those guys, and you're paying a premium price to get some of those guys. Tyler Algier at that low on the board, especially with a unique bye week when you're trying to fill in bye weeks of other guys you've already drafted. I think Algier is a great pick. And he also works out pretty well in a redraft league or in a guillotine league, because in a guillotine league, when you have an 18-team draft, a deeper draft, you're going to fall behind on some positions. And if that position is running back, Algier to me, or he's over here, Algier to me is a great guy to stuff in that running back spot, because I do believe he's going to get enough work, especially around the goal line, those tough yardage situations, for him to pay off coming off the board at RB 48. But now for the big kahuna, the big reason we're all here with Arizona and what they will do on the schedule. How many games will they win? Will they go over or under 3.5? And the question is, can I get this screen sharing bit in time for it to work? Nobody knows. Hold, please. Hold, please. There it is. That part's done. That part's done. And that part's done. Come on, baby. Perfect. There we go. So, as you can see, this is the schedule laid out for 2026 for Arizona. And there are a couple of things I want to highlight before we go in the wins and losses. As you can tell, these red numbers, this whole rest column, this has to do with how much rest they have versus the opponent that they are facing. For instance, Seattle. Arizona has a -4 rest disadvantage in that game because Seattle's playing week 1 on a Wednesday. They're opening up the NFL against the New England Patriots on Wednesday. They get 4 days more rest than Arizona, who's playing week 1 at the LA Chargers on a Sunday. So that's pretty self-explanatory. Also, in week 2, those rest advantages and disadvantages, they don't mean as much as we get later on into the weeks. When we get to week 7, Denver, and Denver is playing the Thursday the week before, they get 3 extra days. The bodies get a little bit more time to recover. That's pretty big. The biggest one being Philadelphia in week 13. Arizona has the latest bye in the NFL, and right before that bye, they have to play Philadelphia. at the end of the season. It's November, it's December, everyone's hurting, everyone's injured, and Philly, a rough and tumble team to begin with, is coming in with a hell of a lot more advantage on that part. And then you get the bye week, 7-day rest advantage against the New York Jets. The other thing I want to note is this orange column. Anytime I have something like this, it is a West Coast team playing on an East Coast 10 a.m. body clock time slot, which is always very unique. And then the biggest one that I want to focus on every time I break down these schedules, it's either going to be green and red or red here, because this has to do with a short week road game for the opposing team. Detroit is playing at Carolina in week 4 on Sunday Night Football. Then they have to fly home to Detroit Sunday night into Monday morning, and then they have to pack their bags again to head to Arizona that Saturday for a Sunday game. That stuff adds up. Those little rest advantages and disadvantages lead to upsets, especially on the point spread as we get deeper into this season. And they do alter wins and losses. That's where these big upsets tend to happen. So now that we've gone through the key of this schedule, let's break down the individual games, because Arizona, it's in trouble. First of all, I already forgot to change that is a 3.5, not a 4.5. We're trying to get to over under 3.5 wins for the Arizona Cardinals. And it starts with a 3-game slate that is arguably the toughest in the NFL. At the LA Chargers, home against the Super Bowl defending champions, and then at San Francisco. 2 of those games are divisional. And if you just keep looking before we even predict the wins, weeks 1 through 11, Arizona has 7 road games. They play their division 5 times. The other non-divisional games are teams like the Chargers, Denver, Kansas City, Detroit. These are very, very difficult games and an extremely difficult start. And if you can find wins here, if you want to bet that over 3.5 win total, where are the wins coming from these first 11 weeks? Because if you don't have them, I'm going to tell you what happens at the end, and it is not good for your over. To start us off, though, I do not see a win in these first 3 weeks. Now, the only one that could happen is at San Francisco, where who knows who's going to be playing for that team. We've already lost Ricky Pearsall. George Kittle came up with an injury. Debo Samuels, there are a wide receiver 1 at this point. Mike Evans has an injury. Christian McCaffrey's the only one seemingly healthy, and he's most likely the most injured player on the field. Who knows who's going to be playing for this team? And also, Kyle Shanahan, you'd think, would make Arizona a punching bag like Sean McVay has during his tenure. Kyle Shanahan's only 9-9 versus the Cardinals lifetime. So for whatever reason, Arizona has been able to pull out some upsets against San Francisco. I do not think it happens in the first 3 weeks. These next 2, however, I think have a chance for Arizona to get their first win if you think they're betting the over. At New York Giants, I don't believe that's going to be a fantastic football team this year. It'll be better coached. It's a better defensive line, even without Sexy Dexy. They should be a lot more competitive. However, I don't think Giants are world beaters. And then Detroit, who I believe are world beaters. That short week road game is a very difficult thing and should not be slept on. And so I am giving the loss to the Giants, but a win to the against the Detroit Lions at home, and giving us 1-5 heading into week 6. Bad news, though, because over the next 4 weeks, I don't see another victory. At the LA Rams, Denver with a rest advantage, at Dallas, at Seattle. This is a tough, tough stretch. I think Dallas is a lot better than people think this year. And I think through the first 9 weeks, Arizona's 1-8, excuse me. We need to find 3 more wins in the final 9 weeks in order to hit this over. It's not happening against the Rams. Sean McVay is 14-3 against the Arizona Cardinals in his tenure. We're going to make it 15-3. I guess 16-3 because they play him in week 6. It's not going to happen at Kansas City because I believe Pat Mahomes and this team, this Kansas City team, is going to be back on their shit this season. And suddenly this team is 1-10. It's not going to be fun. If you're an Arizona Cardinals fan looking to get season tickets, trying to bring your son, buying a jersey, maybe you want to buy him a McBride jersey and you're living in Glendale, let's go catch the Cardinals game. It's going to be a bloodbath, especially in the beginning of this season. In my opinion, it's the toughest first 11 weeks out of anybody in the league. I don't know where Arizona, unless injuries beset these other teams, find victories. So There's still a chance, though, with a 3.5 win total, that we could hit this over with some juicy matchups at the end. And also, things are going in Arizona's favor when it comes to probability. They were 0-5 in games last year decided by a field goal, 2-8 in one-score games last year. That stuff usually comes back to the mean. They were minus 20 something in sack margin. Little things like that start to build itself back up. But with this schedule, the way it's set out, I don't know how many things can go in Arizona's favor in order for them to get a few W's at this stretch. Coming up next, though, we have Washington coming to Arizona, where Arizona has a day extra rest, and then Philadelphia right before the bye week. I don't think they have a snowflake's chance in hell of beating Philadelphia. But if I want to be an optimist, I do think they can pull off the upset against a Washington team that I do not think is going to be very good this season. So that's a 2-win team heading into the bye with 2 wins needed to hit the over. And here's where you have to look at what Arizona wants to do in 2026. Because when you look at these final 4 games, you're hosting the New York Jets, who are also going to be terrible, plus you have a week rest on them. You're at New Orleans, who should be better this year, but is not exactly world beaters. You're hosting likely Fernando Mendoza, and whatever is left of that Vegas team. Is Max Crosby on the team at that point? That's another team that's building for the future. And then week 18, San Francisco, a team that you've beaten. Again, 9-9 Kyle Shanahan is against the Cardinals in his tenure. San Francisco, if they have a great year, they could be resting Brock Purdy in this game and heading off to the playoffs. These final 4 games, can we get 2 wins here? You absolutely could, even with this terrible Arizona team. However, as we said this whole video, Arizona does not give a rat's ass about 2026. They want to lose as many games as they can in order to get the best draft pick that they can. So, when you're looking at these final 4 games in particular, they're going to be fighting with the New York Jets for draft position. They're going to be fighting with the Vegas Raiders for draft position. If they beat those teams, it's doubly bad when it comes to where they end up in the draft next season. So could they hit that over 4.5? It is, the juice is on the over. People think they're going to be a 4-win team because of this ending. I'm here to tell you that even with the way this game is, even with the way this schedule is shaping up, even with me giving them an upset victory against Detroit, an upset victory against Washington, I think Arizona will be throwing Carson Beck out there. They'll be telling Jeremiah Love to, thanks, but no thanks. Let's throw James Conner if he's still on the team out there. Marvin Harrison will be sat with some type of an injury. Trey McBride will be this year's Max Crosby, where he's yelling at the team at the facility, "You're going to sit me? I want to play football." And they're going to say, no thanks. We're going to throw the young kids out there and try and see if we can juice some games. Tanking has entered the NFL, and nothing will be more apparent than these final 4 games for the Arizona Cardinals. And out of all of them, I think the only one they could win is that Jets game coming off of the bye there. And I am finishing this team at 3-14, which right now the under for Arizona is plus money. So if you agree with me that they're going to win 3 or less games, you could get, I believe, plus 135 on that bet. And that's what I'm striving to do, because if I'm running this Cardinals franchise, the last thing I want to do is win 4 games at the end of the season. That's the last thing I want to do. And the schedule does not work itself out where they could potentially, be feisty and be contenders at the end of the year. I just don't see it happening. And sadly, I think it ends up being on the under. Who are our guillotine targets on the Cardinals? Yeah, let's go back to the fantasy section as we end the 3-14 Arizona Cardinals. Can Tony get back to the fantasy section, doing it correctly? First thing, we stop sharing. Second thing, we go back to there. Third thing, we go back to there. Oh, yeah, we did it. Guillotine targets, I explained this a little bit earlier in the video. I think Tyler Algier is the fantasy target and the guillotine target for this team. Now, there is a tactic to go very heavy in the solo positions, like a QB or a tight end in a guillotine league, because it's an 18-team league. So those positions where there's only 18 spots to fill, but there's 32 teams. Like, you don't want to have one of the shittier versions of those solo endeavors. So going after a Trey McBride could really put you ahead. However, you're going to likely have to spend a first round pick to get a Trey McBride and a Brock Bowers. If that does not work out for you when you're drafting in such a deep league, there are going to be positions that you fall behind on. And if that position happens to be running back because you're focusing on the wide receiver position early, spend an early pick on a QB, try and get like a Caleb Williams or a Jalen Hurts on your team to get you through those first few weeks, you're going to fall behind on some positions. And I think Tyler Algier is a great solution to a zero RB guillotine strategy because I believe, I keep on pointing to the wrong way, I believe he's going to get a pretty equal workload, at least a 60-40 workload in this Arizona offense with Jeremiah Love. And as we just talked about at the end of the year, not that you'd still be starting him at the end of the year in a guillotine, he's going to get the bulk of the carries when they sit Jeremiah Love and say, hey, we'll see you in 2027. So yes, I believe that's the winner. Goofy Chicken is in here. Thank you so much for joining. It's a short one today, Goofy. Not a lot to say, not a lot of good things to say about the Arizona Cardinals, not a lot of debate to be had. Arizona, at the end of the day, I believe, is a 3-14 team with upset wins against Detroit and Washington, and still choosing to fall behind those final 4 weeks and hitting the under. But that's it. 30 minutes of me straight talking right down the pipeline to the camera. Tomorrow, we're bringing up the Atlanta Falcons, who have a much higher win total, but still an equally terrible quarterback room. It's a very similar situation with Atlanta with all the firepower they have on offense, yet can they put it all together and win a relatively easy division? I don't know. And we're going to break it down next time. But that is it for the Arizona Cardinals. Follow Tony Square's NFL and we break down 31 more teams. Man, there's a long road. And the stream.